Hi guys, my name is Katie Moreno and I am the founder of OrganizedAdvisor.com, and in this session I'm going to talk about how to develop your yearbook theme using a process called design thinking. So a little bit about me and who I am to get started. Like I said, I'm the founder of OrganizedAdvisor.com. I started it back in 2017 to be a place where advisors can share resources, and now it's kind of grown into more of a consulting agency for the scholastic journalism industry. And so we basically provide resources and advice and consulting to advisors and their staffs in order to really make sure that they are equipped to run and build a thriving journalism program. And so we serve advisors of all different types, all different publishers, all different everything. And we really like to make sure that our focus is always on the advisor first. And so we want to really give any sort of resources we can to make your jobs easier and more fun, less stressful, and that sort of stuff. And so nothing that we do, we charge for. It's all free to advisors. We have an email list. We also produce workshops, and we do like one-on-one consulting with staffs if they're trying to work out their yearbook theme or they want some feedback on their design, all that kind of stuff. And it's just grown into a big community of advisors all across the country that just want to help, especially new advisors, as they're learning how to do this great job that we all do with school publications. So that's what Organized Advisor is. It's just organizedadvisor.com. Like I said, you can sign up for the email list. We send out weekly emails, roughly weekly, sometimes less often. And then there's a whole bunch of downloads on there, and there's a scope and sequence for your other classes, and there's blog posts, and there's just a lot of resources out there that are helpful. So that's what Organized Advisor is. But a little bit about me personally. My name is Katie, and I am from Katy, Texas. Everyone says, "Oh, you're Katie from Katy." Yes, and I've been here my whole life. My parents just loved the name, but they spelled it differently. And so I'm Katie, and the city that I live in is Katy. So it's kind of funny. And then I also have been on yearbook staff, and I've been a yearbook nerd or a yerd since 8th grade. When I was kind of going into high school and getting ready to go into figure out what I wanted to do with my life, my mom and I were looking at course selections and kind of looking and realizing I don't have any hobbies. And she was like, "Why don't you join yearbook or something? You're not in sports, you're not in music, you're not doing really anything, you're kind of artsy, do you think that would be fun?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." I didn't really care. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. But little did I know it would become my entire life. I totally fell in love with it in 8th grade. I went on to be a yearbook in high school. I was editor-in-chief and business manager and student life editor and a bunch of them. And when I went to college, I went into journalism. I thought that this was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But on the professional, journalism end of things, turns out that I didn't really like the writing so much as I liked the design. And so I switched my major, went to digital media, and then went into marketing after graduation. But I realized I also really don't like cubicle life, and I needed more human interaction than cubicle life was offering me. And so I was still in touch with my journalism advisor from high school, and she knew of a position that I could come in January and be a long-term sub and take over for an advisor that was leaving. And I did it, and I never looked back. And I got certified, and I was an advisor for about 6 years in Katy, Texas, where I went to school, not at the same school, but in the same district. And it was just the most fun. I love being an advisor. I love my students. I think it's one of the best jobs that you can have as a high school teacher or even a middle school teacher. I know we have a lot of middle school advisors too. Now I am a journalism consultant full time. And so, another really big passion that came out of being an advisor was that it's really difficult. It's a lot of work. You are essentially running a small business with a product to sell at the end, and there's a pressure and there's certain liabilities, and you're also alone on your campus, and you are the only one that understands what it's like to not just be a teacher, but be a production advisor. And it's a lot, and it can feel really isolating and really overwhelming at times. And so I really have a passion for helping advisors learn how to do it well, and also do it in a fun and stress-free, I don't want to say stress-free, maybe less stressful way, because I think that your product, your yearbook and your newspaper and your publications it'll be shown through if you're enjoying what you're doing. But also I think the kids have a better experience and they get a better educational experience too, and the publications are better for it. And so that's my little spiel about like the journalism education industry. And I just really love it. Some personal, like little funny things is that I am obsessed with iced coffee. I love it so much. I live in Texas. It doesn't really get cold here very often, but even when it's cold, I love it so much. I drink it every single day. I can't live without it. Behind me is my Nespresso maker. It's always close by. So it's kind of funny. And then also I collect colorful pens and I love planning. I actually just released a advisor planner on the website. So, that's coming in the next couple of weeks. And then also I am a certified scuba diver. So in the past year or so, my husband and I got certified to scuba dive. And again, we also fell in love with that. And so we've been going on some trips and seeing the ocean, which has been really, really fun. So that's about me, who I am. But I would say go check out the website. If you need anything at all, everything we do is from advisor requests. And so your wish is literally my command. Whatever you need. If I don't have anything personally that I can give to you to help, I will find someone that can help. So we have a really good network and a good community of advisors. So I definitely would love to have you a part of it. And also if you go to the website, the contact form, the button at the top, it goes straight to my inbox. So that's how you can reach me. But in this session, I really want to talk about yearbook theme and how to develop it to be a really robust and strong theme that your staff can portray throughout the whole book in an easy way. And this is a process that I think is really helpful, not only to make it easy, but also to make your theme better. And so first, I like to start by talking about what is a yearbook theme. So one of the most common questions that I get asked all the time is why do we have a yearbook theme, and what is it? Why do we even do this? Can't we just put whatever we want on the pages and pick a really cool cover? And the answer is, yes, you can do whatever you want. It's your yearbook. But the reason we do a yearbook theme is the same reason we do a theme for a birthday party. It adds an element of cohesion to the publication. And remember, you're making a publication. You're not just making a scrapbook. And there's nothing wrong with a scrapbook, but a yearbook is so much more than that. It is a historical document. It's the record of the year, and I think that it's really important that your students recognize that it's a journalistic record of the year. And so, when you're looking at it from that angle, as it's a publication, it needs to have some cohesion. If you pick any publication off the shelf, a magazine, a college admissions brochure, anything, it's going to have a theme, even if it's not a dedicated theme phrase. It's going to have a consistent look and feel throughout the whole publication. And so that's really our goal. And I like to demonstrate this with students by talking about a birthday party, because that's a very easy, relatable way to explain what a theme is, because we're all familiar with birthday parties, right? So let's plan a birthday party for our little sister. Here's our little sister. We'll call her Sally, I guess. And she's going to have a birthday party. So you're going to get her a cake and maybe some balloons. And then you probably want to tell people that it's her birthday. So you're going to get a banner and it's going to say, "It is your birthday." Period. If you're an Office fan, you know what that's from. But and so you're okay, happy birthday. This is great, right? And she's yeah, this is cool. I like cake and balloons. That's cool. And then she's you know what? Can I have a Frozen party? I really want to be Elsa. And so you're okay, yeah, sure. So then you go and you get her a wig. A blonde wig like Elsa. And she's okay, cool, yeah, I get to be Elsa, perfect. But then all the adults at the party would be why is she wearing a blonde wig? What a weird little girl. That's not why, it doesn't, what makes sense? Why is she running around with a wig on her head? So you don't just do that. You don't just stop there, right? This theme, there's no theme to this birthday party. There's no cohesive element. There's no visuals that are cohesive. There's no decorations. Balloons, I guess, are a decoration, but they're just generic. Your theme for your birthday party can't be birthday, and your theme for your yearbook can't be yearbook. And so instead of that, we're going to change her out of these normal play clothes and put on her big, beautiful blue, sparkly Elsa dress, right? So she's starting to look the part. Then we're not just going to have this plain table. We're going to add a beautiful blue kind of wintry, icy looking table skirt around it to decorate the area. Then you can't have this cake. What is this cake? Throw that out. Get rid of it. You need this beautiful Elsa cake. Let me move myself over a little bit. Then you don't want this background, this "it is your birthday" sign. You want a beautiful background, right? So we're going to just paint the whole wall. We're going to put snowflakes. We're going to put up wallpaper. We're going to make this a lot more interesting. And then these balloons, I mean, they're cute. They're good. They're great. But what if we had a whole balloon wall and we decorated the whole room as it was Elsa's castle, and as soon as people walked in, they understood this is an Elsa party, right? That's a birthday party that has a theme. That's cohesive. Every single element was thought through to be matching this theme. And even though like those balloons with snowflakes, they don't necessarily say Elsa or Frozen or, you know, even ice, but it goes along with the design, right? So similarly, in a yearbook, the theme is a noun, and it is just the unifying and defining device that runs throughout the whole publication. So it is seen on your cover, on your end sheets, on your title page, your opening, your dividers, your closing, your theme content pages, your showstoppers, your folio, your copy, your design elements, your colophon all the way to the end. Like every single page has some element, even your index, of your theme. And so I think a lot of times students kind of miss that, and they pick out a really cool cover, or they Google yearbook theme and they pick one out from this really long list that they found, and it's not representative of their school year or their students this year, or it doesn't really resonate. I tell this story a lot that I had a school one time that I was doing consulting with that they lived in Arizona, and in Arizona they barely have any rain. It's the desert, right? But they really loved this watercolor aesthetic. It was really trendy. It was a couple years ago. And I mean, it's beautiful. Like the watercolor looks great, but they live in Arizona. Like there's no water there. It doesn't make sense, you know, versus a school in Florida or California. Like there's a lot of water activities. You participate in water sports. Like, you know, there's a lot of different things that relate to the water, and the watercolor didn't make sense. Like they were literally in a drought. It would even make sense if maybe they had just come out of a drought and they had some rain. But it didn't make sense for their year. And so they just liked it. They just picked it from Pinterest. But so we worked on it, and we were able to pick a different theme that was more relevant to some construction addition that they had ongoing at their school. So it made sense. But, you know, you can't just Google yearbook themes and then pick one and go with it. And in the same way, you know, we want to make sure that our yearbook theme isn't just a cool sounding phrase or something that we think we could do a lot with. It actually represents our school, our student body, this school year in our city, this particular time, kind of in a post-COVID world, you know, going back to normal. I hate saying that because I'm hoping I'm crossing all my fingers and toes that like this is a normal school year finally. But you know, like that is important, that it reflects all of that, but also that it speaks to our purchasers, our students, the student body. People don't buy things that they don't see ahead of time, and so you want to make sure that you test it out a little bit, like do some marketing, put some stuff out on social media, see what works, get some feedback, talk to some students and see if they like it, see what you know, give them some sneak peeks, and adjust as you go. If you're not getting good feedback, then make changes. It's never too late to do that. So, well, I wouldn't say never too late. At some point with the yearbook, it is too late. But, you know, think through this stuff in the beginning, and then it won't be too late. So, the process that I like to do with students to figure out their theme is called design thinking. And it's not anything special, proprietary to Yearbook. It's not something I invented. It's a very widely used process. And it's actually something that all of these companies, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, also use. So Google, Apple, Microsoft, Nike, Toyota, Samsung, these are companies that shape our world. They shape our products. I mean, I'm sure the majority of you have a Microsoft, Google, or Apple phone, right? Like they are the culture that we live in. And they use this process to design their new products, their new services. Everything that they do comes from this design thinking process. And it's so popular that there's even like a master's certificate program at Stanford now for design thinking. And it's a process that is really widely used for developing any sort of product. And essentially that's what you're doing as creating your yearbook is you're creating a product. You're selling it at the end of the year. There's a customer, there's reviews, they're going to either like it or not like it. And people want to purchase things that they feel like they were part of the process too. So this process also allows them to give you feedback early on, and then you can make changes. And then at the end of the year, in this case for yearbooks, they're like, oh, I helped make this. Even though they weren't on staff, they gave you feedback and they brought ownership into it. So I'm going to walk you through step by step. I will say that this is adapted a little bit from the actual design thinking process to apply to yearbooks. It's just kind of like watered down to do it in a short presentation. But if you Google design thinking process, there are a ton of resources out there, worksheets and sessions and activities that you can do that will really help you and your staff kind of think through these processes. And so, like I said, also, if you have any questions, though, please reach out. I'm happy to help. If you wanted to plan a workshop for your students to do the design thinking process for your theme, I can help you plan that. So anyways, so the design thinking process consists of 5 steps. The first one is empathize, which is where you conduct research to better understand your audience. The second is define, which is where you use your research to observe the needs of observe the needs and problems of your audience. The third phase is ideate, where you brainstorm solutions, highlight opportunities for innovation, and I'll go into detail about each of these. The fourth is a prototype, where you build real tactile representations of your best ideas. And then you start testing, where you conduct testing of your users and you iterate based on that feedback. And so a lot of times looking at these 5 steps, students and our advisors and our whole staff, we end up wanting to start in this prototype phase. We want to just start designing. We want to start building. We want to start throwing pictures and designs on our spread. We sometimes even skip the sketching phase. We go straight to the computer and open a blank spread and throw stuff on. But we notice we've skipped 3 steps. We really need to start here at this empathize phase. We need to understand our audience, our customer, and by customer, usually you're selling to mom, they're the ones actually hitting the purchase on the credit card. But your audience is really the students. And so you want to create a product that speaks to them and if they feel represented. One of the schools that we ran this process through with was they were analyzing their audience. They recognized that they have a very low number of sales for their sophomores. And they were like, why is that? We understand why, there's a lot of freshman purchasers and obviously a lot of senior purchasers and juniors, I guess, obviously want to purchase it. But why is there such a drop off with sophomores? And they said they conducted this process and then they went and did some more research and they dug into it and interviewed some sophomores and they're like, hey, why didn't you buy a yearbook last year? And these were, juniors at the time. And they're like, oh, well, we're just not in it. I didn't think I was in it because I'm not really, I'm not doing anything this year. I'm not new. I'm not a senior. Whatever. And there's not really much that happens sophomore year. I guess you get your driver's license, but college applications, SATs, AP classes, a lot of that stuff happens junior, senior year, and freshmen are new, so they get a lot of attention. And so they put a particular emphasis on sophomore coverage and marketed to sophomores, and they fix that problem through this process. So just an example of showing you unless you look at those numbers and you look at that data, you would never know that, right? So the other thing before I go into depth about each step in particular is that we want to teach our students process, not product. So I think a lot of times advisors get into the habit of teaching, we are creating a yearbook, we are creating a publication, we are creating a school newspaper. But really, the skills that you want to teach your students are not how to create a yearbook. That's not a marketable skill unless you're going to go become a yearbook teacher and it's going to take over your entire life like mine. You want to restructure that teaching process and make sure you're teaching them things like design and creative thinking, critical thinking, testing and feedback and criticism and teamwork and all of those softer skills is really what leads to creating a yearbook. And so we want to teach them that process and that thought that goes into creation and not just creating a yearbook, because that skill is only going to go so far. So let's get started with the empathize phase. In this phase, you are looking at a lot of different statistics. You are doing a ton of research about your audience. And so you're looking at things like socio-demographics, socioeconomics, the cultures, the community retention. Do you have a lot of kids that are moving in and out? What's your school spirit like? What are the popular jobs? Academics? Are you heavily academic focused, or do you have a really great athletic department, or both, or fine arts? And then what are your collective experiences at the school? You know, like, are you in a community that has a lot of, is it a college town and a lot of your community is college professors' kids? Or are you in a military town and a lot of your students are military families, and so they're moving in and out really a lot, and so like they might not even be at your school for 4 solid years. So what about this year can you capture for them to take with them? Are there any school changes? Do you have any building, renovations or additions or demolitions? Obviously global occurrences. Recently, we've all become very familiar with that. And then obviously every year you want to cover things like trends, and also what's the public perception at your school. One of my really good advisor friends worked with a school in California, and they were talking about how their reputation on campus or in the community is that their school is just a bunch of rich kids and they're all really spoiled. And it's because they live in Los Angeles and, or Silicon Valley, I think. And Mark Zuckerberg is their neighbor. Like, they all know him because they live on the same street. And like, literally they are a bunch of rich kids, but there's so much more depth to them. And so they wanted their theme to reflect that, and that they're not just, what the community perception might dictate, which I think is pretty cool. And so things like sociodemographics and socioeconomics, when you do the research, it might not be relevant to your yearbook theme. It might not be something that you want to cover, but maybe you have a really large population of international students, or you have a lot of a particular culture that you want to highlight. Like, if you are creating a yearbook and your yearbook staff has a bunch of one type of person, then your coverage is probably going to reflect that. And so you want to make sure you look at those numbers. Maybe you have a really big freshman class coming in, and previously you have had normal numbers forever, and the admin is kind of scrambling on how to take care of these extra 300 freshmen for whatever reason, or maybe you've had a drop off in numbers, and a lot of people are now going to homeschool or virtual school options because of post-COVID or whatever. Like, there's so many different nuances to how your school is set up this particular year. And looking at these things can help you determine what is different about this year. Because sometimes in yearbook also, it can just feel like you're doing the same thing year after year after year. But in reality, there are quite a lot of, updates and edits and changes. And especially right now, the world is changing so fast. And so it's really just picking what things you want to focus on and then cover them. So the vibes for this section, I like to live my life based on vibes, but the vibes for this section, or this stage, is that you do not have any bad ideas. At this stage, you're letting all the newbies, everyone, just throw out ideas. I know this about our school and this about our school. I like to do this with a bunch of sticky notes up on the wall, and kids just post them everywhere. They're like, okay, here's my idea about this and this and this and this. And you're just posting everything you could possibly know about the school. You're also making sure you come back with statistics and information, not just ideas. And so if a kid wants to know how many freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors there are, they actually go to the registrar and they get that information. They come back and put that sticky note up there. So that way you can know if it's useful later when you get to the define phase. You are just word vomiting, I like to say, everything you can possibly think of up to your, put it on the sticky note and put it on the board. This is just a generation session. And there's going to be repetition. It's no big deal. Just put it up there. It's really high energy. Play some music, get creative, give every kid a pad of sticky notes and have them just write down as many ideas as they can think of about how it relates to their school. Define what it's like to be a student at your school this year, in this year, in this season, in this demographic, in this city, that sort of stuff. And you want to also make sure that you get all your students involved, because this is the first phase. Sometimes the returning students can be a lot more willing to participate and the newbies kind of feel scared. And so you want to make sure that they know that this is, the environment where there are no bad ideas. We're not turning anything down. There might be something that we use. There might be something that we don't use. And if we don't use it, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means not right now. And so you really want to encourage students to really word vomit everything they can think of when they're empathizing with their audience. Okay. Then you want to start to define that audience. And so in this stage, you start to create a persona for who your audience is. So you're looking at, you can even give them a name and a face and an age and their interests and their likes and their dislikes, what they're motivated by and what they're challenged by. I like to build a persona. And so it makes it kind of easier when your students are creating content. They can look at this persona and feel like they're creating content for them. And so say your persona is Samantha, and they're 17 and they're interested in skateboarding. They live in California. Their strengths are they're really athletic. They're really determined. They like frozen yogurt and Metallica, and they're motivated by getting out of high school and going to college and living on their own, and they're challenged by their classes because they're in all AP classes. So you define this person, and obviously this person doesn't exist, but you define this persona that embodies the type of student that goes to your school. And obviously you're not going to hit everything, and you're not going to hit every, interest and stuff like that. It's just a general thing. And so when they're creating content, they're like, would Samantha like this? Does this fit Samantha's vibe? Would she be interested in reading this? And it just kind of helps put a name to a face kind of. And you can also create a persona for your yearbook. I had a school that they created they picked a celebrity that matched the tone of their yearbook for that year. And so that one year they did Kate Middleton. And so they just said does this font, does this color, does this design, does this whatever, imply, does this have the same vibe as Kate Middleton? And so they picked something really sophisticated, really kind of plain and simple, really minimalistic as a design aesthetic, and it matched Kate Middleton. The next year, they picked, I think it was Shaun White, the snowboarder. I think he's a snowboarder. He might be a skateboarder. I don't know. And so they picked him, and their book was really grungy and edgy, really bold and bright colors, kind of had ripped paper vibes through it. It was really, really cool, but it was completely opposite from Kate Middleton. And so you can pick a persona for your book as well, and kind of align all of your design elements to that persona. And then in the second phase of this stage, you want to craft a mission statement. And so we do this because our brains don't inherently know how to create content, but we are good at finding solutions to problems. And so if we reprogram the way that we think about design, it allows us to be more creative in the way that we make stuff. And so in the same way, our brains just aren't wired to, off the top of our head, create an idea. But if we have a problem, we can usually solve it. And so what that looks like, we'll go back to the vibes. So what that looks like in your classroom is you find out that 40% of students are involved in advanced classes and 60% are not. So how do you cover that in your academic coverage? Obviously, you don't want to just cover the AP classes because the majority of your students are not in them. And so you want to cover them, of course, but maybe 60% of your coverage is about academic classes to reflect that student body. And then your mission statement is that, you'd say, our focus this year is to tell the story of our student body in change and transition post-pandemic. We'll focus on individual stories, group experience through timelines, Q&As, in-depth feature stories, and data sets. So this tells your staff what your goal is. It's to tell the story of our student body in change and transition post-pandemic. And then it says how. Individual stories, timelines, Q&As, and in-depth feature stories and data sets. So you've really defined very clearly how you're going to do this. And so when your students are looking at their blank spread, they can be like, okay, I need to cover change. How am I going to do that? Even if they're doing football, how are they going to cover the changes that maybe came from post-COVID to now? Or if that isn't anything, maybe how they've changed from when they first started playing football in 7th grade till now, or maybe how they've changed from 9th grade till senior year, or maybe how they've changed, their friend groups have changed. Like, there's so many different angles that you can do. But when you have this mission statement, you can always look back at your content and align it to the mission statement. So maybe on the football spread, you're like, do I have individual stories or do I have group stories? You probably need individual stories for this. Is there a timeline we can do, like anatomy of a game day, that we could do it in timeline format? Or could we ask some Q&As? Or is there somebody on the team that we could do an in-depth feature story? You're not going to do all of these things, but at least 1 or 2 on the spread, and you have a list of 6 things right there. Actually, 8 things if you count change and transition through your book. And you don't have to sit there and kind of like brainstorm it every single time. You have a list of goals right there. And so let me go back real fast about the vibes in the room. This is a little bit lower energy. So you're slowing it down. You might have some like music on still, but like it's more relaxing. This is like deep brainstorming time. This is like heavier work mode, and it's time to make decisions. And in the first phase, we said no bad ideas, and that's still true. But at this phase, it's okay to say, okay, like maybe this isn't like right for this year. This doesn't fit our persona. We'll do this next year, maybe in the future. And it's okay to say no to some of the ideas that you thought of in phase 1. So then, let me pass my examples. Okay. Then we get to the ideate phase. And so this is where you start to look at your verbal and your visual design for whatever theme you've decided on. At this point, you should have had a theme phrase kind of bubble up out of those ideas. You've categorized them maybe. You've looked at kind of like all the things that go together. You've looked and you're like, okay, here's our sports coverage. Here's our student life coverage. Here's how we want to cover groups or academics. And you've looked at what's important to you out of all that data that you looked at, and you defined, and you pulled out what's important. You threw out what's not, and you started to kind of see some themes come out. Your theme phrase probably came out of that process as well, and it'll start to speak to you. And then you want to like figure out how to tell that story to your audience. And so you want to look at things like your tone, your mood, your like sensitivities you might have in your community, like financially, emotionally. If you're in a community that maybe last year, this is a really sad example, but suffered from a school shooting, you're going to have special sensitivities for your yearbook that you don't want to do necessarily a really like brightly colored, fun, vivid book, because you want to reflect the tone of the community at the time. Alternatively, if you won state last year in the football championship, I don't do sports, I'm sorry. I don't really know the terminology very well, even as a yearbook advisor. But then maybe your school is really excited and amped up and wanting to celebrate that. And so your yearbook theme can reflect that too. You might have some other sensitivities that I haven't listed here. And you want to just make sure that your tone and your mood reflects that, but also whatever your theme is. If your theme is serious, your tone and your mood and your language and your design needs to be more serious. If it's super bright and vibrant and colorful, then your language and colors also need to reflect that. And so I like to do this through a word bank where you create like a big long list, like get a Google Doc and have everyone collaborate on it and just make a big long list of all the words related to your theme and phrases and catchphrases and idioms and cliches and everything that you could possibly think of that kind of relate to your theme tone, your theme mood, your theme sentiment, the source. Like look up other words that mean the same thing. Again, you can throw them out. The vibe for this is high energy again. You are not married to anything. You're just dating. You're just throwing ideas out there. You're seeing what fits, seeing what works, testing it out, going on a couple dates. You're having fun. It's high energy again. You're all frantically adding stuff to this word bank. And in the same way, you're creating a mood board. You're looking at Pinterest, you're looking at Behance, you're looking at magazines, you're looking at college admissions catalogs, you're looking at menus, you're looking at the TV, you're looking at billboards, you're looking at everything you can get as inspiration, and you're looking and seeing, does this fit the aesthetic we're going for? Does this fit our persona? Does this emulate the mood and the tone that we're looking for? And if it does, you're gathering those all into a mood board. And then you're going to use these to create, in the next phase, to create examples and modules and see what works. But right now you're just gathering and you're really building out what the theme aesthetic should be. All right. Then you get to stage 4. So stage 4 is prototype. And remember, this is where we usually start. And so we've gathered all of these words and phrases and inspiration pictures and a persona and our mission with our goals. And we have built this like package of like what we kind of sort of want. But it's not enough to just build that. We need to build out our actual content. And so here is where we finally get to build our theme packet. We decide what are our fonts, what are our font sizes, what modules are we going to do some example modules, do some example templates, look at the inspiration pieces and rebuild them in your software. Look and again, this is like lower energy, like we are focused now, we're on the computer, we're sketching out ideas, we're filtering out ideas, we're building a couple different versions and throwing stuff out. We're creating visual examples of the ideas that we just came up with in the first 3 phases. This is where if you have a student who's like, I think this would be really cool, I want to see this, like, can we do this font? You say, yeah, go build it. Like, let's go see, like, go put it on the paper and see and build it out. We're putting our money where our mouth is, kind of, and making sure that the ideas that we threw out there are actually cohesive. Because sometimes you can come up with a beautiful set of fonts, a beautiful color scheme, and a great design element, and then you put them on a page and you're like, this is just not working. This is not what I want. And if you've ever had a yearbook theme that's been hard to carry throughout, you're probably missing those first 3 steps. It hasn't been thought through enough in the beginning before you start jumping on the computer and designing your spreads. And so this is where, you really start to develop this like theme packet or style guide of exactly what your theme is going to look like. And you start to show your staff, and this might be done by the editors, but you're going to show your staff examples, like this is what the expectation is. Because if you're struggling with students missing the mark and kind of like not turning in work that is where you want it to be, it's not because they signed up and they woke up that morning to fail. Like they don't want to, disappoint you. They're not trying to not miss the mark or trying to miss the mark. They probably just don't know what that mark is. They're new, they're learning. And so you really have to break it down and show them examples and say, this is how I made this, and this is how we do this, and this is what we want, and this is what we don't want. And so you want to make sure that you build out all those examples, and anything that you can show them instead of tell them, do it. Anytime you can in life, when you are trying to explain something, don't just tell them, show them. That's always going to get you a better result in the end. And then the very last phase is test. And so you take all these prototypes that you've come up with and you present the ideas either to the staff or to a couple students, and you get the feedback. And so you want to obviously make sure that they're giving constructive feedback, and you coach the group through how to give constructive feedback. Here's what's helpful. Here's what's meaningful. Don't just criticize unless you have an offer, a solution to it. Be specific in your feedback. All those things that we're taught as teachers on how to give meaningful feedback. Teach your students how to do that as well. And then also teach them how to accept constructive criticism and how to use it to make their products better. And then also, print out everybody's prototypes, put them up on the wall and say, are these cohesive? Do these go together? Does this publication, if this was how it was done, does it look like it goes together? And tweak it before you get started on your actual book. Because at this phase, these are all just prototypes. They're not real. They're not real spreads. You're using pictures from Google. You're using dummy text. You're not using actual spreads and wasting production time. But also this process, even though it does take maybe a week, of your production time to kind of get these things down, it is time well spent, because once you get all this process done and these examples built up, it's so easy to go and build your spreads because you already know what the expectation is. And then lastly, does it inspire anything new? Sometimes once you've spent all this time kind of thinking and really marinating on this theme, you look at them all up on the wall and you're like, wow, like this actually would look better here, or this kind of module put together with this one looks really great, or let's maybe try this, but let's use this font. And so you start to kind of like get re-inspired once you have the group feedback and you have the students kind of like a focus group, and then you see them all together and look at how they are cohesive or not, and you really have thought through this theme in depth, versus just starting at that prototype phase and kind of seeing what happens. There's no background, there's no common language, there's no word bank to go off of, and that kind of stuff comes after the fact, after you've designed. But remember, we want our content to be king. Content should drive that design, not the other way around. And so you really have to take that time to flesh out your theme concept before you start designing. So that is the design thinking process in a nutshell. I hope you thought it was helpful. If you have any questions at all, like I said, please reach out. My email is just Katie, Katie, at organizedadvisor.com, organized advisor with an ER. And I am here to help you. So if you decide to do this with your own staff, feel free to reach out. I have a bunch of activities that you can use to kind of get your students in this mindset. I would love to see how it went for you, and then if I would love to give feedback on your theme or on your designs or anything throughout the year. So if you need anything, please reach out. Other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!